Next, Vladimir Putin has declared war on Britain's fish and chip industry. How very dare he? Pulling out of a decades-old treaty which allows UK trawlers to catch Russian cod in the Barents Sea. The withdrawal is a direct response to disruptions caused by UK sanctions on the Russian economy. Joining me now to talk about this, Edward Lucas, the journalist and author. Afternoon to you, Edward. It's a serious day when they come for our fish.
Gosh, just imagine if they went for the potatoes as well.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about that for 1 second. I mean, this is, it sounds like, a bit of tit for tat, or they've decided to respond to what they see as an unfair set of sanctions put on them. I'm surprised it took them so long in some respects, Edward, but how significant is this?
I think it could not be less significant in practical terms. Our fishermen haven't been in those waters for years. This deal was quite a big deal when it was done in, I think, 1956, before you and I were born. And but these days our fishing fleet's pretty small. It mainly fishes in our own waters, or the North Sea or the North Atlantic. We don't get to the top of the North Pole anymore. And I think it's symbolic in that the Russians are looking for something to do. And they've already banned people from Russia for life. I'm banned from going to Russia, to my sorrow. But we have a lot more that we can do that annoys them, and they don't have so much that they can do that annoys us, really.
Yes.
I worry about the fate of British people living in Russia, because they've just arrested an American-Russian dual citizen. There's another American journalist, Evan Gershkovich, who's behind bars. So I mean, they have the huge capabilities to be nasty, but not really to affect our economy the way that we can affect theirs.
I mean, I'm slightly surprised that Putin went there, to be honest, Edward. I mean, does it look, as you rightly say, I mean, it's of all the areas of concern, and you rightly say they are huge. One of our own journalistic colleagues, who you just alluded to there, is, as we speak, in jail for the crime of being a journalist, for goodness sake. And there's lots of other potential targets, one might imagine, like that in Russia, Westerners and Brits living in Russia. So to go for the fish thing does seem, well, I was about to say small fry, and I don't mean that as a pun. I mean, genuinely, does it not make Putin look a little bit desperate? I mean, it kind of begs the phrase, is that all you've got, Vlad?
Of course, it's not all he's got, because Russia also has the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons. And when they're not going after non-existent British fishing boats, they are threatening to turn London into smoking radioactive rubble. And so there's a sort of very fiery fighting talk coming from Russian regime propagandists. And I do think we actually, and we're joking about this a bit, we are actually in the most dangerous international position. I think in the lifetime of anyone listening, who's going to be listening to this show, we have shown ourselves actually to be unable to respond seriously either to Russians, the invasion of Ukraine, or most recently to the murder of Alexei Navalny. And Putin doesn't really take us seriously, and that's very dangerous, because our defense relies fundamentally on deterrence. And if the other side aren't scared of us, then that means they feel free to attack us.
I mean, on that point, do you sense there is worse to come? The
Yes.
rocky road ahead?
I absolutely do. I mean, I fear that Ukraine's now losing. We had a chance to deal with Russia with a strong, united country of nearly 40 million people on our side, and we didn't help them in time, and now they've been very badly beaten up by the Russians, and may actually be beaten. And Putin will be back for more. And next time it'll be a NATO country, perhaps the Baltic states or somewhere. And we'll be in a much worse position. We still are not spending the money on defence we should spend, and we're not spending the money we do spend properly. We have aircraft carriers that are broken all the time, other ships without crew, planes without pilots, regiments that are under strength. For what we spend a lot, 50 billion on defence every year, astonishingly little from it. And there's many other things that we're not prepared to do properly either. So
Sure.
it's a pretty lookout right now.
And just briefly, it does warrant or deserve a lot more time, but I'm aware we're against the clock. What could Putin do? I mean, aside from nuking the West, and let's assume he doesn't do that, but what could he do to make life genuinely difficult for this country?
Well, more assassinations, more sabotage, more cyber attacks, and possibly a military incursion or stunt against our NATO allies in the Baltic states. And any of those would leave us huffing and puffing and scrambling to try and find an answer.
Edward, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk and gauge your views on these things. Edward Lucas, the author and writer, with us here on Talk TV.